Hi there, and thanks for coming along. Welcome to episode 18 of my series 100 Casts, in which I will be casting 100 games of League of Legends sent into me by friends and viewers. If you'd like your replay to be featured in this series, check the description. There's instructions there on how to do that. Hope you enjoy it. See you at the end. Alrighty, well, let's get this shoutcast started. First, I would like to apologize for the lack of League of Legends sound effects. For some reason, the LoL replay client again bugged out on me and refused to replay any sounds, so I don't have those for this match. However, I do still have the footage, and I would like to commentate over it anyways, as it's a pretty interesting match, I think, and it's good practice for me. All of these episodes in this series being for my practice ultimately, because I do intend on making shoutcasting something more than a hobby if I can, and I need a lot more practice before I'm able to reach that point. Anyways, let's get into the matchups. On blue side, down in the bot lane, we have a Lucian who you just saw standing in that tri-brush guarding his jungle, as well as a Morgana that he's paired with down there, who has the Ghost Bride Morgana skin, which is a very, very pretty looking skin, but I have to say that personally, the sound effects, I don't really like them, and there's one reason at least why I'm glad the sounds are gone. Anyone who has played with Ghost Bride Morgana knows that when she's backing, it sounds like a vacuum cleaner is sucking her soul out of her body. It's a really unpleasant sound effect, and it's one of the few sound design choices that I genuinely dislike in League of Legends. For the most part, the sound design is fairly spot on, so that's an uncommon occurrence there. However, on to the rest of the matchups. We have a Renekton in the top lane for blue team, going to be facing off against a Jax, fairly common top lane matchup, both of them being very heavily played top lane champions, both of them bringing teleport as well, the top lane summoner spell of choice these last few patches, as in the mid lane, we have a Katarina versus an Ahri. The Katarina going to be having the disadvantage in the laning phase, I'd like to think, because the Ahri does have the ranged advantage in terms of both most of her abilities as well as her auto attacks. So just overall, a range advantage in that mid lane for Ahri, which should, and usually does, translate into a creep advantage as well. But back to the top lane, as the camera swaps up there, the Renekton versus the Jax is a fairly common matchup and usually goes something like this. The Renekton, having the higher damage and higher sustain early on in the game, is usually able to bully out the Jax early on, and then the Jax, having the later game scaling, if he can get the game to go longer, usually wins towards the late game. The Shaco going for a invade there onto the blue side. Red buff does get the buff and then manages to juke out multiple members of blue team, is still alive. He has been exhausted though by the Morgana. The Morgana still chasing after him. Her bind not up yet. The Shaco choosing to turn around and duel the Morgana, who doesn't have any of her teammates nearby. The Morgana being forced to flash, as the Shaco did bring Ignite and has a lot of damage along with that double buff. The red burn and the Ignite does get first blood on the Katarina, who came to help out her friendly Morgana, and goes down to that backstab passive, giving first blood over to the jungle Shaco on purple team, as we swap back up to this top lane, which I was talking about before I was interrupted by the Shaco playing quite well there for his team and being very aggressive, as most Shacos do, continuing the aggression actually. Coming down to the bot lane, going to be landing a slow onto the Lucian. The Leona's Zenith Blade missing by just a few pixels. There could have possibly been another kill for Shaco or one of his friends, but the Leona does miss her skill shot by a tiny little bit there, and so purple team cannot take full advantage of that Shaco gank down in the bot lane. As in top, the Renekton dives on to the Jax and gets a stun, and then Cole the Meek taking him out even under his tower. The stun going through the dodge from Counter-Strike that Jax has. It stuns him anyways, despite being an auto attack enhancement. Jax's Counter-Strike works very strangely. It will block some things like the Gangplank Q, when it won't block others like the Renekton's W, which will still stun him whether or not he has Counter-Strike running. Swapping back over to the mid lane, let's look at the CS here. The Katarina is going to make me a liar from earlier. She's going to be having the advantage there in mid lane. Jax has teleported back up to top as we swap back down with the camera to bot lane, where Morgana landed a good binding for herself onto Leona, and Leona took quite a chunk of damage from the enemy team's combined burst there after getting CC'd by the Morgana for quite a good bit of time. I believe the CC lasts for about 2.5 to 3 seconds, depending on the rank. Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong about that, as we saw the Shaco there come in for a little gank in mid lane, landing some damage onto Katarina, but not being able to finalize a kill there. Does return to his jungle. He's going to be farming, and we have a bit of a lull in the action once again. Gives me an opportunity to talk again about the matchups here. As I was saying, Katarina made me a liar earlier, as she does have a higher creep score than the Ahri, and the Jax also made me a liar. Despite dying once, he does have a higher creep score than the Renekton in the top lane, nearly doubling the Renekton's actually, has 30 to his 17, as down in the bot lane, we see Morgana landing yet another binding onto the Leona, and both Vayne and Leona, the purple team's bot lane comp, which I don't believe I mentioned earlier when I was talking about comps at the beginning. The purple team does in fact have a Leona and a Vayne in the bot lane, which is a high damage, high risk, high reward bot lane comp. And they do both go fairly low in that trade, but neither one going down. Still just 1 kill to 1 kill on the board at about 6:15 into the game. Katarina landing a bouncing blade onto Ahri in the mid lane, as we see the Renekton has Fury enough to go in for this trade here. Going to be landing the stun with the Empowered Fury. Does get a bunch of extra damage on that stun. It actually does the most damage to a single target if you have Fury up, whereas Call the Meek has more sustain as well as a good amount of damage. As down in bot lane, Shaco is ganking once more, coming in for the lane gank, turning invisible and going into that lane, getting the kill onto the Morgana, going after Lucian, but his team's lagging a bit behind him, and Lucian does manage to take him down low enough to discourage him from a continued chase. Jax using the counter-strike, but not managing to get in range for Leap Strike onto the Renekton, trying to flash away from the last bit of damage. Renekton then using his ult to try and survive the last tower hit, but is not able to. The health from the ult not managing to keep him alive, as down in bot lane, Leona leaps on to the Lucian with Zenith Blade, and then Lucian trying to dash after to finalize that kill into Leona, does get exhausted, does not have enough damage through the exhaust to take her out, gets condemned onto the wall by Vayne, and goes down, giving another kill over to purple team, who now have a 2-0 Shaco and a 1-0 Vayne at 7.5 minutes into the game, as well as Jax having that kill, because up in the top lane, Renekton did dive the Jax and got a kill, as in the bot lane we see the Vayne landing condemn onto Morgana. She was standing a bit close to the wall. The Morgana then turning around to exhaust the Vayne, landing a few auto attacks onto her, is in a large creep wave though, not able to shoot out the binding and land that. Turns around to try and throw the binding, is low on health, goes down to the passive proc from Silver Bolts. Renekton teleporting into the bottom though is going to avenge his friendly Morgana and take out that kill, teleporting in just after she goes down to Vayne, giving another kill over to Renekton, who is now 3-1, sitting pretty on a pickaxe, a longsword, and a Doran's Blade. Looks like he's going for that higher damage Renekton build, where you rush a Ravenous Hydra first, and then build some tankier items late game. It allows you a good amount more lane domination, and still allows you to be a tanky monster as the game progresses. Jax, left alone in the top lane, is doing what most Jaxes will do, though, when left alone in a lane. Split pushing like hell. Split pushing his heart out is the phrase I was going for there, but I combined it with another one and ended up with a half phrase that made no sense. But you get my point. He's split pushing a lot, and he does manage to take out the top lane turret in Renekton's absence, him having teleported down to the bot lane to finish off that kill on Vayne earlier, as Shaco's going to run invisibly into the mid lane and is now on a killing spree. Shaco doing as most Shacos do, either being useless or being very, very helpful for his team, and choosing to go with the latter here. Purple team's probably thankful for that, as the Shaco clause does pertain that either a Shaco feeds and is horrible, or that Shaco carries the game. So it looks like this Shaco's going the way of carrying, as down in the bot lane, Leona is going to be Zenith Blading into the Morgana, who does manage to spell shield any possible stun follow-up from Leona, so really it's just a little bit of harass traded back and forth, and actually Purple Team comes out on the losing end of that harass trade, despite being up in kills against the enemy team, does still have the matchup disadvantage, Lucian being a very powerful opponent to take on a Vayne with, as in top lane, we see Renekton and Jax dueling it out. Renekton has more minions fighting for him. That might make the difference in the end here. It does. Both of them popping their ults around the same time, but Renekton's ult proving a bit more useful than Jax's ult in that 1v1, as well as having about a minion wave and a half fighting for him, whereas Jax had no minions at all on his behalf. Does manage to take out that kill and put himself at 4-1 now, finishing out the Tiamat after backing. The Tiamat being the minor Ravenous Hydra, essentially. It has the same sort of passive, but does a lot less damage, as we see down in bot lane. Leona going to be Zenith Blading on to the enemy Lucian, as Warwick shows up for the first time out of his jungle, finally decided to stop farming that jungle now that he's level 6, or rather 7. Does get a double kill for himself in the bot lane. What a way to enter the ganking game. But goes down to the Leona. Well, more like the tower hits and a little bit of help from Leona, giving that kill over to the enemy support, but taking a double with him for his trouble, as the game essentially evens out in gold here. 14.7 gold. 14.7 gold? No, that's 14.7 thousand gold on each team. Down in the bot lane, the Shaco has found a Lucian all alone and is chasing after him, knifing him in the back over and over again. Going to be going under the tower here. Can he finish off this kill? Throws the knife. Lucian heals as it connects, though. Flashes away to avoid the last hit that would have killed him, but Shaco uses his ult to dodge out a tower hit. The ult actually does make you invulnerable for a short amount of time, but Shaco eventually does go down to Morgana, who has shown up here now to help out the friendly Lucian, as in the mid lane we saw Katarina leaping onto her opponent in Ahri. Ahri trying to ult away, but not getting out of there quickly enough to avoid the flying knives of death that Katarina spewed out with her ultimate. And the Ahri does go down to Katarina, giving her her first kill of this game, putting her at 1-2, as in top lane, the Jax going to be landing a stun to Renekton, but again is fighting in a minion wave when he does not have one, and ends up on the losing side of that trade, as his tower also is going to end up on the losing side of that trade, going down, giving another tower, well, actually giving the first tower of the game over to blue team. Don't know why I thought they'd gotten one before, as the Warwick going for that early dragon. A lot of very heavily auto-attack based champions like to do that, as I believe in my last video an Udyr went for a bunch of early dragons as well. The Warwick is going to get the dragon down towards the bot lane, as up in top Renekton took on Jax and Shaco and managed out of a 2v1 situation to take out the Jax and nearly bring down Shaco. Did go down in the end to the Shaco, though. Shaco now having a shutdown gold for himself in addition to the other 3 kills that he's gotten at this point. Certainly going to be happy with all that gold. And we get a bit of a lull in the action again. Thankfully, my throat was beginning to get a little bit hoarse there, as Katarina finds Ahri in the mid lane, dodges out the charm with Shun Po. Very nicely timed Shun Po there to dodge that skill shot. And down in bot lane, blue team's going to be pushing up onto the tower, looking to get another outer tower turret for themselves, but purple team, not wanting that to happen, is going to be pushing out the wave as well. Ahri throwing out Orb of Deception to clear out that wave in mid lane. And it really looks like we found a bit of a lull in the action for ourselves here, so I might as well talk about some of the builds. The Warwick choosing to go with Boots of Mobility there, so that he can get in range to use his most powerful ability, his ult. I believe it's called Infinite Duress. It allows him to leap to an enemy champion, and striking them 5 times holds them there suppressed. One of the few suppresses in the game, one of the few abilities with that kind of CC, the most powerful CC there is. It's not affected by tenacity, and it is not affected by, it's either Cleanse or Mikhail's Crucible that doesn't affect it. One or the other. I know one of them does get you out of the suppression, be it a Skarner suppression named Malzahar or a Warwick suppression, and the other one does not. I just can't quite recall which one is which. Morgana nearly getting condemned into the wall there, but luckily Vayne wasn't at quite the right angle to hit her into the stones of that wall, as we see the Warwick invading into the enemy team's red. Does take that out, revenge for the early red buff that Shaco stole back towards the beginning of this match, And Jax is chased on off back to his tower, and Shaco back to the mid lane tower. Warwick going to be running at him, though. Maybe has his ult up. No, does not want to dive here. The Ahri is around and could charm him out of his ult. NECC does break the Warwick ult, by the way, as Warwick going to be counter-jungling a bit more, not even caring really about that Ahri, who's throwing some skills over the wall at him. Renekton stunning out Shaco, who's forced to leap away with his invisibility on his Q there. And Warwick and Katarina here at the tower. Katarina using DFG and then leaping in with her W and Shunpo and her ult. The Ahri being forced to use heal just to save her own life there, but it does save her life and she manages to escape despite the healing reduction on Katarina's ult, but still the healing was enough to save her life, as well as that miniature speed buff that heal gives. However, it was not enough to save the mid lane turret from Blue Team's wrath, and Blue Team does put themselves about 4,000 gold in the lead here. 2 turrets up on the map, as well as a dragon that Warwick took earlier by himself. The spell shield going to be stopping Lucian from getting stunned by Leona. He does get exhausted, though, dodges out of the Leona ult. Warwick comes down to finish off the kill onto Vayne. Actually, Morgana gets the last little hit there, but Warwick does use Infinite Duress to hold her still for the Morgana to do so. Shaco, not really wanting to take on a 5v1 at this point in the game, does let the tower fall, and that is all 3 outer turrets going down for Blue Team, who now have a 6,000 gold lead here at the 15 or 16 or so minute mark. Shaco hanging around the edge there, does turn invisible, leaps over the wall, going to be going for the Morgana, who spell shields herself. He's turned away by that spell shield, though, does not want to keep fighting through it. Ahri being forced to ult away from Renekton. She's going to be ulting back towards with another charge, using the final charge of Spirit Rush to try and get some more distance. Katarina leaping out of the bush there, going to be taking out Ahri, who did not realize there was a Katarina sitting in the bush, as Leona leaps on to the Renekton, who does go down to Vayne. Vayne now chasing after the rest of the enemy team. Gonna be surprised once again by the Katarina out of the bush. The Shaco going down to Katarina. Lucian flashing forward to try and finalize the kill on to Leona. But Leona doesn't go down. Instead, Vayne does. The long-range binding from Morgana, able to finish off that kill, give another kill over to Blue Team, who after all that are still only about 6,000 gold ahead. Jax, doing what Jax does, was left alone in the top lane, is on the inner turret there. Warwick, though, nearby, going to be able to push him away from that. I don't believe Jax even knew he was there, but he had an inkling there were too many enemy players alive and not accounted for on the map. He didn't really want to stick around and get killed while trying to push that tower, but he did get some damage onto it, as well as a good amount of farm for himself. He is still ahead of Renekton in farm, but Renekton more than making up for that gold deficit from the farm by having 6 kills to the Jax's 1. Multiple members of Blue Team now grouping up in the mid lane for the traditional ARAM that happens at around 15 to 25 minutes in most League of Legends solo queue games. A max range binding landing onto the Ahri there. Katarina then taking advantage of that, DFGing and then Shunpoing in and instantly deleting the 9-tailed fox from the map. She does go down, giving Katarina another kill, putting her at 4 and 3, making really good use of that Deathfire Grasp to take out kills wherever the opportunities present themselves. Assassinating left and right. Shaco standing on the other side of the Wraith camp, looking for an opportunity to flank on the enemy team. Does not see one, though. Sees, though, that Renekton is split pushing the top lane and is going up there with Jax to try and deal with that. As some pings are going down on the dragon, it is coming up in just 8 seconds or so, and Warwick does have that timer, and he's nearby along with Katarina, so it looks like Blue Team's going to be going for the dragon, as Renekton trying to tower dive the Jax, is actually in range to finish him off with the AoE damage from his ulti that's running, gets a double kill then on Shaco, who came in to try and help out the Jax, but instead goes down to the Croc, and then the Croc, with the spell shield on, is going to simply walk away from Leona. Leona not able to do anything to stop her, gets bound actually, looks like Renekton might be turning around here, has a full Fury bar, doesn't want to risk it though, doesn't know where the rest of Purple Team is, instead chooses to sit in the bush, but Purple Team does suspect they're in that bush as Ahri Spirit rushes forwards, and with the last few charges of her ult, actually misses the charm there, chooses to flash forward and throws out the Orb of Deception, hitting with both the original toss and the return, as well as an auto attack, taking out the Morgana and the Renekton. However, Vayne is in a bit of trouble here. Katarina going to be DFGing and then leaping in with the Shunpo and the Death Lotus, taking her out, as in top lane, the Ahri might be in a bit of trouble. The Vayne does Shunpo in and hits with the W. The Infinite Duress comes out from Warwick, and Warwick manages to finish off that kill onto Ahri, putting them at 19 and 12. Blue Team having the 19 and Purple Team having the 12. at around 20 minutes into the game here. Jax leaping away there from the Katarina and the Warwick, does not want to get caught out. Jax has managed to finish off his Trinity Force here. That's the first big buy for any, well, not for any Jax, as you can certainly have more build variety than being forced to rush a Trinity Force. Don't just build that on my account, as Warwick does find the Shaco in the jungle here, and in ahead. Warwick is something that's very difficult to deal with. He keeps chasing after the Shaco, has that speed buff because Shaco is fairly low from Blood Scent. He does get a speed buff whenever Shaco's in actually quite a large radius around him and low enough on health. And he finds that Shaco box and takes it out using his sweeper trinket, as Vayne is going to be taking the purple team's blue buff, just securing that. Probably would have wanted to give it over to Ahri, but there's too many blue team members around for it to be safe to leave up for too long, and Vayne just taking it so that no one from blue team can counter jungle and steal it. Up in the top lane, Renekton, going to be going after this top lane tower, keeps taking some tower hits though, went in before his minions, tried to get out, misjudged how far away he was, and then took another few tower hits. So he does get some damage onto the tower though, but Jax has shown up, and Morgana is on the way. They might be going for another tower dive here onto the Jax. Morgana shooting out the binding, but just barely ending before it hits Jax. However, they are going to get this consolation prize of the tower, and Jax is going to walk away. No, he's not. He's going to come up for that minion, but Morgana, not having the bind up as he does so, is not going to be able to land it onto him. So he does manage to get a minion for himself in return for giving up his tower. Ahri hitting the charm there, quite a good charm actually, over the wall, but her team and herself not being able to capitalize on it, too many members of blue team around. So despite the fact that she hit quite a nice skill shot there, nothing going to be coming of it, as blue team's going to be pushing up the mid lane. Warwick's just taunting spamming out some taunts at the enemy team, and his team going to be taking out that tower there. Ahri does have decent wave clear though, with the Orb of Deception, being able to throw it out over the wave and deal that true damage on the way back. Jax going to be using Counter Strike now, running away from the enemy team. Jax's Counter Strike, in addition to having the dodge effect, does actually lessen area of effect damage that he takes while it's up, which is something I didn't know, and I was looking up Jax recently, and you know, that's an interesting little mechanic that I didn't even know existed. So always nice to learn new things. As down in bot lane, Vayne's going to be taking out Lucian, who bit off a bit more than he could chew, going into a 1v2 against Ahri and Vayne. But Renekton taking advantage of the fact that multiple members of purple team are dealing with the Lucian, is going to be going for the tower dive here. Katarina killing off Shaco, but Shaco getting Katarina in return. Then Morgana going down to Ahri, who has shown up from bot lane to help out her team. And I believe that is a 2-for-2 in mid lane, and purple team got one down in bot, so they do come out ahead overall in those two engagements across mid lane and bot lane. Bit of a lull in the action again, as purple team and blue team both go back to base, going to be picking up some items. Warwick choosing to go with the Blade of the Ruined King in addition to the Feral Flare that he bought earlier. Well, I suppose he bought a Wriggle's Lantern earlier and then it turned into a Feral Flare while he was holding it. Must have been a bit strange, holding a torch and then it just suddenly becomes a bigger torch. But I digress. He bought a Blade of the Ruined King, as I said, which is a quite nice buy on Warwick, because when he's in Infinite Duress, he does attack 5 times during the duration of that, and it procs the Blade of the Ruined King percentage health damage 5 times, as well as the lifesteal 5 times. It counts as 5 auto attacks for purposes of on-hit effects. Anyways, down in the bot lane, the Warwick nearly catching the Vayne there, going to be running after her, but he didn't quite get in range for Infinite Duress, and so could not hold her there in time. The Katarina tossing out the DFG, then going in with Death Lotus, nearly taking out the Ahri, but she does have her ult, and as such is able to escape. Not for long, though, as Croc comes in and says, "I want me some fox meat," and takes out the Ahri. She goes down. Croc in a bit of a trouble now, though, being assaulted by 4 members, no, only 3. There's 2 Shacos. I thought it was actually 4 members, but it's only Shaco and his clone. Katarina, trying to run through the enemy tower rather than the enemy jungle, does get caught out by those 3 members of Purple Team herself as well, giving a double kill over to the Vayne there, I believe. As up in top lane, Jax going after this tower, trying to split push, does get caught by the Morgana and the Hyena and goes down. Morgana getting the kill credit for that one with a nice binding, catching him out as he leap strikes onto a ward over the wall. Multiple members of Purple Team now pushing up the mid lane. Shaco leaping over the wall, going after this Lucian. Maybe doesn't want to go after him He changes his mind after leaping over the wall, though, realizes that more members of Blue Team are around than perhaps he originally accounted for, and decides simply to walk away while invisible. Thankfully, Lucian didn't have any pink wards nearby, and so he couldn't see the invisible Shaco right next to him, which he probably would have gone for had he been able to see. Morgana walking up towards Vayne now, trying to get that binding, but instead just settles for chasing the Vayne away from the mid lane. And I'd like to return to the builds here, now that I have a moment to. The Ahri choosing to go for a very heavy damage build there with a DFG and then a rush right into the Death Cap, the Rabadon's Death Cap. Morwick has the Dragon Timer once more, and his teammates are coming to help him out taking this dragon. He's going to be smiting that away and getting it for himself, another Feral Flare stack, and more importantly, that global gold for his team. These dragons certainly being doing a lot to keep his team in the lead, his team being about 10,000 gold up right now, and not in small part due to that dragon. The English language sometimes escapes me, I apologize. Jax getting caught out by a binding there does take a good amount of damage from the combined harass of Morgana and Katarina. Morgana landing another binding onto Leona, but is in a bit of a pickle herself, gets condemned into the wall, and then takes about 2/3 of her health in subsequent auto attacks from the Vayne, having her Silver Bolts proc happen twice over the course of that little engagement there. Renekton being forced to back off from the top lane. Shaco came around and did a bunch of damage to him and forced him to back off, so they successfully dealt with the Croc split push as Katarina gets hit by a max range charm over the wall from Ahri. Very nice charm. Another one. This time they could follow up on it, and they do get the kill onto the Katarina, giving some more gold over to, I believe it was Ahri who got that kill there, allowing her to build even more damage, because Katarina, going with a very similar build to the build that I was mentioning earlier about the Ahri, also has a Deathfire Grasp and a Death Cap, and now is building a Void Staff, or rather has built a Void Staff. So she has a good amount more damage than the Ahri, if only because she has 2 penetration items built, as well as the AP items, which Ahri has built. Though Ahri might be going for that Void Staff herself, has bought a Blasting Wand with that gold that she got from the kill just there onto the Katarina. The Morgana getting caught out here by the Leona does spell immune herself to avoid the second stun from the Leona's ult, and then is forced to flash away after getting exhausted by the Leona, but that is exhaust and Leona's ult down, as in the bot lane we see Jax and Warwick dueling it out, auto attacks after auto attacks coming from both of them. Warwick looks like he's winning this duel though. Warwick able to sustain tank a bit better than Jax can, and does manage to get a kill for himself in the 1v1 with Jax, having the Randuin's Omen and the Blade of the Ruined King, 2 perfect items for dealing with a Jax. Renekton finding Vayne in the jungle, Morgana with him. The Renekton and Morgana going to be shutting down that Vayne, giving that shutdown gold over to Renekton, who is 10-5 at this point, doing quite well for himself in this matchup at around the 27.5 minute mark. Renekton now finding Shaco, dashes in, gets feared up by the box, but has more than enough damage to deal with Shaco. Shaco realizing this, going to try and juke away using his invisibility, then goes into Clone, trying to juke away with that at this point, though they do realize which one's the correct one, because he does have a red buff on, and that is a dead giveaway since the Clone does not inherit any buffs, which the original is wearing. Jax leap striking in front of the last bullets from the Culling, trying to save Leona's life, but Katarina was there too and took out the Leona. The Renekton settling for killing off the clone of the Shaco. The Jax nearly going down as Warwick does use infinite duress onto him to take him out. Warwick now might be in a bit of trouble as Ahri does land her burst on him, but Warwick being quite able to sustain tank up, as well as having a good amount of health from the Randuins, does survive for quite a while. He's in a 2v1 in this situation though, does go down to the Vayne, giving a double kill over to the Vayne, who earlier flashed forward onto the Lucian and took him out, but that is an inhibitor turret down for Purple Team at a 7-3 turret lead, Blue Team having the 7 and Purple Team having the 3. Shaco going to settle though for counter jungling, taking that blue buff from the enemy team, does get discovered by the Morgana, but can always just leap away, being Shaco, can turn invisible and jump away, being a tricky little clown, as the Ahri spots out a ward with her sweeper, does manage to take that out. It's always nice to see when somebody besides the support picks up a sweeper. That's one of the most frustrating things I find when I play. as support that very few people actually swap from their yellow trinket to a red trinket as the game goes on. I don't know if they like having that extra ward more than the sweeper, or if they just forget, but having a few sweepers on your team late game is certainly a good thing. Renekton going to be dashing forward through the minions to stun onto this Shaco. Does have that second dash. Actually, no, he does not anymore. He used it earlier. I apologize. Shaco turning into his ult to try and confuse the Renekton. Renekton using his Q at just the time when Shaco puts down the box, does kill the box before it turns invisible. Shaco going to be leaping over the wall. However, Lucian is here. Lucian, as soon as he turns visible, going to be throwing out the piercing light, but then gets stunned up by the Leona, then flashes forward after using Relentless Pursuit. Does take out the Shaco. His pursuit is too relentless for Shaco to survive. And now the Lucian gets a double kill with the very tip of Piercing Light there, and then with the passive proc on his autos takes out the, actually no, Renekton gets that onto the Leona as Morgana nearly goes down in that fight, but not quite enough damage coming out from Purple Team to take out the Morgana. She does manage to survive. 3 members of Purple Team going down, none from Blue Team going down, and they're going to be pushing up now. Lucian going over to that open inhibitor, going to be trying to take that out. Vayne, finding a pink ward, is fairly off from her team, though. Does get caught out by this Renekton. Renekton going to be chasing after her. She does condemn him back, goes into the ulti, tumbles into final hour, turns invisible, and keeps chasing after him with the Silver Bolts passive, but he has been joined by a Warwick as down in the bot lane. We see that Lucian is taking out that open inhibitor. He does manage to get that for his team, as Vayne is now in a bit of trouble. Warwick going to be charging after her, gets condemned and stunned against the wall. Uses Infinite Duress, though, as soon as the stun ends, and the Renekton coming in to help out Warwick does take that kill onto Vayne. Just a bit too much guaranteed CC. No way you can tumble out of an Infinite Duress. Does get killed there by the combo of the Hyena and the Crocodile. The Lucian getting caught out here by Shaco trying to counter jungle does go down in the end to Ahri, who rounds that corner and throws out a Orb of Deception to pick up that kill for herself. But 3 members of Blue Team are doing this Baron. A 4th one is teleporting in. That will be Renekton. He's going to dash over the wall into the pit. The Baron is quite low, and no members aside from Leona of Purple Team are nearby, and I really doubt Leona's chances of stealing. Yeah, she doesn't even give it a shot. No real point as a support with that little damage trying to steal, though I believe there was one LCS match where a Janna with a rank 1 tornado managed to steal a Baron. I'll have to look it up and try and find out which one that was so I can put the link in the description, because it was a wonderful thing to watch. It was beautiful as the Morgana flashes forward to try and land a charm onto the Ahri, but the Ahri neatly sidesteps it and then ults away using Spirit Rush to avoid the damage from Katarina. Does still go to about half health, and using Spirit Rush now is going to be going back in, dealing some damage to Katarina as Warwick gets the Dragon for his team, putting his team at nearly 20,000 gold in the lead. So actually about 15,000 gold in the lead, I'd say, as the Jax getting a little bit of damage dealt onto him by Renekton is fairly able to survive at this point, though. Does have some health from Triforce as well as that cloth armor, allowing him to be moderately tanky, as Leona takes some damage as well, going in onto Morgana, trying to stun her up, but she gets spell shielded. Down in bot lane, Warwick chasing after the Shaco, but Shaco turning invisible and jukes the other direction from the Warwick, but Warwick has vision on him as soon as he comes out from invisibility, as over the wall Katarina goes. DFG first, and then using Shunpo, following it up, getting a kill there, getting a double kill onto Vayne immediately afterwards with the resets. Is in a bit of trouble now, though, gets healed by her friendly Lucian. Triple kill now for her, quadra kill. Can she get the penta? Shaco's coming around the corner. Is he going to be able to escape? The Shaco turns around to avoid the Katarina. Does turn invisible, jukes away. Katarina running the other direction, thinking he went that way, is not going to be getting this penta unless a miracle happens. The Shaco dropping the box to try and fear the Renekton goes down in the end, does he? Yes, he does go down in the end to the Warwick. That is an ace for Blue Team. And a quadra kill, nearly a penta there, but still just a quadra kill for the Katarina, who's now 5 members strong. Blue Team is now 5 members strong at these Nexus turrets. Looks like they're going to be picking up the victory here for themselves. Nice way to end a game for that Katarina, getting a quadra kill for herself. They tower dive the Katarina. The Vayne getting a double kill here. This might be... No, it's not going to be a comeback for Purple Team. Lucian was auto-attacking the Nexus that whole time, and that is victory for Blue. Thanks for watching. Many thanks to guest day RPM Vow for the use of his replay. If you'd like your replay featured in the series, please check the description. There's instructions there on how to do that. Thanks for watching. Hope you liked it. See you tomorrow.